The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union now offers Cultivate Farm Finance and is ready to support local farmers. Cultivate is a farm finance option available from 40 credit unions around Ireland, including Access and Bantry credit unions here in West Cork. With a Cultivate loan, farmers in West Cork can benefit from the local decision-making and personal service offered by their credit union. To find out more, go to www.accesscu.ie/cultivate or call on 028 21 883. Cultivate is a loan specifically designed for farmers that provides short to medium term loan opportunities built specifically around the growing needs of our farming members.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined as always by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder to our listeners and viewers to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose the credit union, choose local, choose community. West Cork Athletics is going through something of a boom period at present, with athletes from the region regularly making headlines at the biggest national and international events. So with the Irish Life Health National Indoor Senior Championships set to take place at Abbottstown this weekend, we thought we'd better talk to two of the biggest stars in the sport. The Ballineen Bullet Phil Healy is Ireland's fastest ever woman and an Olympic finalist, while Glengarriff's Darragh McElhinney is one of the sport's most exciting up-and-comers who recently won gold and silver medals at the Under-23 European Cross-Country Championships. Both Phil and Darragh will be hoping to make a big impression this weekend ahead of the World Indoors in Belgrade in March, and we'll hear from both on today's podcast. Later in the week, we'll have a special GAA podcast for you when we're joined by Cork GAA CEO Kevin O'Donovan. We'll be chatting to Kevin about a whole host of topics, including Ed Sheeran concerts, club fixtures and structures, and the appointment of Keith Ricken as Cork boss. And as I mentioned, we'll release that one later in the week, probably on Thursday. But the focus is athletics today, Kieran, so we might leave discussions about the dismal weekend results for the Cork men's and women's sides until then, because there's good news in West Cork sport at the moment, and a big part of that is the performance of our athletes. And I know you have a very special feature coming up in this week's Southern Star Sports section, which is documenting this boom period, as I called it. So maybe give us some background on it before we chat to both Phil and Darragh.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jack. It is a boom period for West Cork athletics, and it's just brilliant to see from the likes of Phil Healy, Ireland's fastest woman, all the way down to some of the younger athletes, the likes of Jane Buckley from Newcestown, who's going to head over to Rhode Island on a sports scholarship later this year, to the likes of Maeve O'Neill from Donny's Athletic Club, to even the young Fionn Harrington, who's actually on a sports scholarship over in America right now, as is another Bandon AC athlete, Laura Nicholson. So we've so many different West Cork athletes who are achieving great things at the moment. Like we know Phil Healy, she's an Olympian. She made history last year. Darragh McElhinney makes headlines, whether it's cross-country, indoor or outdoor. But it's the likes too of Shane Howard from Bandon Athletic Club, who was the former men's indoor and outdoor Irish long jump champion. Look at Nicola Tuthill, just a teenager from Kilbrittain, who when she was just 16 years old won the Irish senior women's hammer title, which is a phenomenal achievement. And as far as I know, Nicola had a brilliant result last weekend too, when she qualified for the World Under-20 Championships in Colombia later this year. So it's just great to see West Cork Athletics right now. Very much on the front foot. And Lauren McCourt from Inishannon, who runs for Bandon AC, is another name to mention here, as is Diarmuid O'Connor, another Bandon athlete, who set the Irish under-20 men's decathlon record at the European under-20 championships last year. And that's almost the tip of the iceberg stuff, because athletics in West Cork right now is it's just booming, Jack. It really, really is. And it's just great to see. And in this week's Southern Star, we're looking at some of the top athletes that are putting West Cork on the map. And it almost comes back to what we spoke about on the podcast before, how our local athletes are doing so well, even though we don't have the facilities here in West Cork for them. And that's why Bandon Athletic Club's planned new full-size outdoor running track, 400-meter running track, will be such a game changer here in West Cork. It's going to be incredible. And they'll have all the other outdoor facilities too, for the long jump, for the hammer, and so on. So when that comes online, hopefully spring, summer next year, like, that's such a boost to West Cork athletics, but to West Cork sport in general, because we'll have a top class facility right here in our own back door. And hopefully that will help inspire the next generation of West Cork athletes.
Yeah, well, as we mentioned in this Thursday Southern Star, Kieran's going to document many of the athletes he's mentioned there. But on today's podcast, we're going to focus on two of the more high profile of those, and that's Phil Healy and Darragh McElhinney. And Kieran, before we hear from Phil and Darragh, maybe give us an idea of where they are in their seasons at the moment, and what are their prospects at the National Indoor Championships this weekend, because you'd assume both will be in strong contention for medals.
Yeah, so the National Senior Indoor Championships will take place at the Sport Ireland National Sport Campus this Saturday and Sunday. And in Phil Healy and Darragh McElhinney, we have two real medal prospects. So quick look at Phil. Phil's been in super form so far in her indoor season. Just 2 weeks ago, she ran a new 400-meter indoor PB when she clocked 51.74. So that puts her second on the all-time Irish list, and she's just behind Karen Schenken's Irish indoor record of 51.58 that was set 20 years ago. So Phil is closing in on another national record there, and she's in great form. Like I said, she's had 3 sub-52-second 400-meter runs so far this year. So if everything goes according to plan, she is the athlete to beat in the women's 400-meter this weekend. She'll have a bit of competition from the likes of Sophie Becker and Roisin Harrison, but you would think with the class and the form of Phil that she's favoured for gold. And she's already, Jack, between indoor and outdoor, she's won 14 senior national gold medals since 2014. Like, that's incredible. First, for the longevity and her dominance in Irish women's sprinting, and that goes from 60-meter indoors all the way up to 400-meter outdoors. So across all the different sprint events, indoors and outdoors, Phil has won gold. So she's just we call her the Queen of Irish Sprinting for a reason, and hopefully she'll be sitting on her throne again this Sunday evening. And then Darragh McElhinney, only 21 years of age, but already he's amassed an incredible collection of medals, records, and honours. And again, the good news is, heading into the men's 3,000 metres this weekend, Darragh is in top form. At a race in Metz in France there a couple of weeks ago, he set a new indoor 3,000 metre PB for himself. He ran 7:45.91, and he took 5 seconds off his previous PB. And it's also a new Irish under-23 men's 3,000 metre record, and it qualifies him for the World Indoor Championships in Belgrade next month, and that'll be his big target coming up. And just to mention that Phil will be competing at the World Indoors in Belgrade next month as well. So Darragh's form right now puts him right in contention and in the conversation for medals this weekend in the men's 3,000 metres. And I think the good news is, when Darragh ran his PB a couple of weeks back, when he crossed the line, of course, he was delighted to run a new PB, but he felt there was even more in there. So that's very encouraging, that he thinks that there's even more to come, and we might see that this weekend.
Well, those championships take place across Saturday and Sunday. I'm not sure, Kieran, if there is television coverage. I'm sure there will be somewhere, and if not, I'm sure there'll be plenty of streaming coverage online on YouTube, so you'll be able to follow all the West Cork athletes involved online. But for now, let's hear from Darragh McElhinney, and first, Phil Healy.
We've had Storm Dudley, Storm Eunice, and Storm Franklin. And Storm Phil Healy is going to take the Nationals by storm this weekend. Welcome to the podcast again, Phil.
Thanks a million for having me on, Kieran.
That's one of my better intros and better promos, so I'm going to hold on to that one. But looking ahead to the Nationals this weekend, it's the Irish Senior Indoor Championships. But given how experienced you are, would you still have nerves coming up to an event like this?
Oh, definitely. And I even we competed at the start of January there in the National Indoor League, and I was so nervous. And I knew that there wasn't going to be anyone in the race that was going to challenge me, but I was so nervous in comparison to, say, 2 weeks later, I was at the World Indoor Tour racing the top athletes in the world, and I didn't have the same nerves. But I think it's more so because it was first race out, and different things like that. But no, 100% will have nerves at the weekend. And I think it's normal to have nerves, because otherwise I'd be like, why am I so relaxed? You know?
Because when it comes to these the National Senior Indoor and Outdoor Championships, like, you're a pro at this stage. You've won 14 senior national titles between the indoor and outdoor, which is just incredible. And I think 6 of those were indoor at the 60 meters, the 200 and the 400. But for our listeners, Phil, besides the obvious difference between the indoor and the outdoor championships, obviously one being indoors and one being outdoors, what are the main differences between both?
Yeah, so especially over 400, it is 1 lap outdoors, and indoors it is 2 200-meter laps. So that certainly is a lot more challenging in terms of who's in the race, because we all cut into the same lane after 150 meters. So you have to put yourself in the best position possible to be at the break. Otherwise you can get caught in a lot of traffic, and it can be game over from there, because it is very hard to pass. With the 2 bends, it is really hard to pass on the bends. So you really only have the straights to pass on. So you do have to put yourself in that good position. And even looking at the other events, it's 60 meters indoors, it's 100 meters outdoors, and then the 200 is very fun to run indoors, I find, in comparison to outdoors. So it certainly, indoors, I suppose, is a lot more entertaining in some events compared to outdoors, but I certainly enjoy doing the indoors.
Tactics come into play a lot more so in indoors, and how much of that tactical side of athletics do you like and enjoy?
Yeah, it does come to play, because you have to see who's in the race, and some people go off like really, really hard and get to the 200 break really quick, but that doesn't mean that they're going to survive the rest of the race as well. So with 400, I suppose it does come down to small margins. If you go through that belt too quickly, it can cost you, and 400 is a long ways if you go through too quick, but then you can go through too slow, and you're not going to have the race executed correctly either. So it does come into play, but I suppose you can go over the tactics of who's in the race over and over again, but the race is going to play out itself when you're in it. So you do have to act on your feet, and I suppose experience comes to play in 400 meters a lot, because I've certainly made the mistakes through the years, but I definitely have that experience gained from major championships and different races indoors, and that would stand to you a lot more than racing outdoors, I suppose.
Do you think we're seeing the best version of Phil Healy right now, given what you said there about you've had those experiences of those huge international championships over the last couple of years? You've learned from mistakes that you feel you might have made in races, that you feel now that you're at that stage in your career where you can be the very best you can be, because physically in top shape, but also because you have that experience as well now.
Yeah, definitely. And I even probably look at the World Indoor Tour there in Germany at the end of January. Should I push to the bell a little bit more and got ahead of that Polish athlete? Probably should have, but I didn't. So like, I suppose you still make the mistakes like along the way, but yeah, like that experience certainly has stood to me, and I go into races a lot more confident in terms of how they're going to like how I'm going to act in the races, or I've made these moves before and I know that it works. And yeah, like it definitely has stood to me right through to now, and hopefully in the years going forward as well.
We're thinking back over the last couple of years, Phil. Obviously, you've won national titles at all different sprint distances, and look back to last year's Olympics, you competed in the 200 and the 400, but you're concentrating on the 400 indoor this season. Why so?
Yeah, and I suppose when you come to the major championships, so we have World Indoor Championships this year around Patrick's weekend. So there is no 200 meters indoors at a major championship. So I enjoy running the indoors, and I've qualified for the World Indoor Championship. So that is going to be our main focus. But I suppose this weekend with Nationals, I also have a World Indoor Tour next week in Madrid. So just after Nationals on the Wednesday. But I suppose if I didn't have that, I would have done the 200 and the 400 at Nationals this weekend. I know I am in really good 200 meter shape, but I just haven't had the opportunity to race the 200s yet this season. But the 200 would be more so for, I suppose, for fun indoors, especially when it doesn't really count for anything in terms of major championships. But as we look into outdoor season then as well, I will probably race the 200 here and there, but the 400 will be the main focus as we head on into the outdoor season. European outdoors will be the main focus. We do have World Outdoor Championships as well. It is a very busy year because they were postponed from 2021 because of COVID, and we never have a European outdoors and a World Outdoors on the same year. So they're only 4 weeks apart. One is in America, one is in Germany. So that obviously creates a bit of, I suppose, planning and logistics as well, because even with time zones and recovering from your body recovering after you come back, will we choose both? We don't know yet, but that's a problem for a few weeks' time.
And looking ahead to this weekend and the senior indoor national championships, you've been tearing it up on the track in the indoor 400 meters so far this year. So you had a 51.97, a 51.96, and then a couple of weeks back, a new PB of 51.74. How much of a confidence boost is that, Phil, to record a time like that, but also to show that all your hard work is paying off?
Yeah, and it's massive knowing like that these are 3 sub-52 second runs in my first 3 races of the indoor season. 2 of them have been completely solo. The World Indoor Tour in Germany, it isn't the best of tracks, but it's a great meet. So like I know that there is a big time in me yet. Like the Polish athlete that just pipped me at the World Indoor Tour in Germany went on to run almost a second quicker a week later. So yeah, there is positives in there, and I'm very confident going into World Indoor Championships that I'm in this form. But 400 meters in Europe especially is red hot at the moment, but across the world as well. Like I remember going to World Indoor Championships in 2018 and I had a 52.08 that ranked me 5th or 6th at the time. Going into the championship, I now have a 51.74 and I think I'm ranked 12th. So it really has upped across the event and by every athlete. So there's nothing separating like the top 25 athletes in the world at the moment. So it will be a very exciting few weeks, and hopefully I can build on the form that I have now and even go quicker in the weeks ahead.
Is Karen Shinkin's 51.58 her Irish 400 meter indoor record? Is that in your sights?
Look, I suppose records are there to be broken, and it is very, very close to that record. And like just over a 1/10 of a second is absolutely nothing over 400 meters. If I do break it, an absolute bonus, and it shows like that's a record that has stood for, I think it's 20 years. So like it shows that 400 meter running in Ireland certainly is breaking new barriers, but there's nothing to say that record could be broken by the likes of Rashida a couple of weeks later again. So I suppose it shows that barriers, as I said, are being broken. But end of the day, I could go out, say, to World Indoor Championships, could be running 52 seconds, but get through the rounds. That's more important than the times as such when it comes to a major championship. But look, everyone wants to run quick and have these records as well. But yeah, it's all about just being in the right race, executing the race, and if you do both, then the times will come. Like you saw last year when I was at European Indoors, in the final, it was being in the right race. We went through the 200 meter split really quick, and I did run a PB at the end of it as well. So the right race will get the best performance out of you. So fingers crossed for the weeks ahead.
You mentioned Rashida Adelecki there, and I'm just thinking straight away of your duel in the 200 metres at the Irish Outdoor National Championships last year, which was a race for the ages, Phil. And in fairness to Rashida, she's had a superb start to the season as well. And does that extra competition almost spur you on to know that there's another top-class Irish athlete there who's pushing you all the way, and she's posting fast times as well. Like, do you thrive off competition like that?
100%. And like, I remember like years previous, like Amy Foster was dominating the 60, and I suppose was the young one coming through, whereas now I'm the older side of things, and Rashida's coming right through, and there's great talent across all events in Irish athletics at the moment, especially with the younger athletes coming through, and that's what you want to see. It's healthy competition. Someone is always going to take your place, and that's always across all the sports, but it's great to see Irish athletics moving in the right direction. Rashida has a phenomenal year so far. She took my 200-meter record indoor. She actually broke it outright as well because it was faster than the outdoor record. But this is like, Irish athletics is going to new levels. It shows everybody has to up their game. The 60-meter record only lasted something like 5 or 6 days. We've had records over 1,000 meters. The lads have gone sub 4 minutes in the mile. Like, it's just unbelievable to see Irish athletics going to new levels, and that gets, as I said, everybody to up their game across all the events.
It's been a brilliant start to the year for Irish athletics. Like you said there, the amount of records and PBs that have been set in the first couple of weeks of the year has been incredible. But to finish off, I just want to ask you about Bandon Athletic Club. They got a huge boost lately. They got a huge sports capital grant to go towards the club's planned new facility, and when this does come to fruition, it'll be the first 400-meter all-weather track in West Cork. There'll be proper facilities right here in West Cork for local athletes to train on, so that means West Cork kids and teenagers and athletes, they won't have to travel up to the city anymore to use the MTU facilities. Like this, when it does come to fruition, Phil, this will be a game changer for West Cork athletics.
Oh, this is absolutely massive, and to everybody involved in the athletic club that have made this possible, and all others that contributed to the sport and helping get the grant. It's unbelievable, and not just for athletics, so many sports will be able to use this facility. Like, this is absolutely massive for Bandon and its surrounding areas. And like me growing up as a kid, we would always have to have gone to CIT. So having this top class facility in Bandon town is going to be absolutely unbelievable. The club has already gone from strength to strength, and adding this facility in will just take it to a whole new level. And I suppose it will encourage a lot more kids growing up now to get involved in the sport, that this facility is there, and hopefully we see great talent coming through in Ballineen Athletic Club and right through West Cork as well, because this is unbelievable for the surrounding area. And I suppose the likes of Billy Good and Catherine Duggan, who would have been the stalwarts of Bandon AC right through the years, this is something that they've always wanted. Unfortunately, they weren't there to see it come to fruition, but no doubt that they are proud of all the movement that Bandon Athletic Club is making, and is only going to go to new levels with this facility.
Good times for West Cork athletics, and hopefully fast times for Phil Healy this weekend. The very best of luck, Phil.
Super, Kieran. Thanks a million.
Delighted to be joined by Avril Condell of Access Credit Union, who's here to tell us a little bit about Cultivate Farm Finance. So Avril, maybe just give us a brief introduction to what Cultivate Farm Finance actually is.
So Cultivate is a collaboration of 40 credit unions throughout Ireland. West Cork has both Access Credit Union and Bantry Credit Union. The loan itself is up to 75,000 unsecured for 7 years is the max term, but obviously can be personalised and customised to each individual's needs. It's a great facility actually for farmers, because it covers cash flow, machinery purchases, like there's a fertiliser crisis now, as we know. So literally anything that is required for the farm can be covered by this loan. The rate is very competitive. We can match the repayment term and the repayment frequency to each individual farmer depending on their enterprise. And you also have the benefit of the life cover that comes with the credit union loan, which I think is very important for people these days at no extra cost.
And if I'm a farmer and I'm listening to you on this podcast today, how can I get involved?
So if you're not sure of which credit union you're involved with, you can go to Cultivate Credit Union directly, which is www.cultivate-cu.ie, or you can phone 1800 839 999. And if Access is your credit union, you can contact me directly. So it's avril@accesscu.ie, or you can ring me on 085 268 2727.
We're going to complete the holy trinity of athletics on this week's Star Sport podcast, because we've had Darragh McElhinney on before talking about the outdoor. We've had him on talking about cross country and his heroic stair. And now we're talking about indoor with the National Indoor Championships coming up this weekend. Welcome back to the podcast, Darragh.
Thanks very much, Kieran. Good to be back.
Like I said, we've talked to you before about outdoor and your achievements there. I'm thinking back 2 years ago at the National Seniors when you won the men's 5,000 metre, and then obviously the cross country just in December when you won a brilliant silver medal at the European cross country, and now it's indoor. So talk to me a bit about indoor and how much you enjoy it.
Yeah, to be honest, I absolutely love indoor racing. I think because of my kind of small frame, it kind of suits me a bit better as well, because you've got obviously the track is only 200 meters, and then with the steep bends and stuff, I always seem to run pretty well indoors. And I think kind of time of year suits me as well, because I always go to altitude in January. So I'm usually coming into the start of the season off a good pre-season camp, and yeah, there's probably not as much kind of pressure indoors as well. You know what I mean? Because it's probably not as big a deal as outdoors in the way that obviously you have the Olympics for outdoors, so it is kind of what's targeted by most people. But then on top of that as well is the 3,000 meters is, it's it's a recognized distance indoors more so than it is outdoors. So I'll be going to the World Championships for the 3K, whereas there's no 3K in the World Championships or the Olympics outdoors. And I think 3K kind of at the moment seems to be where maybe I'm kind of running my best. I think in time it will be the 5K as I get older and get kind of more miles into the legs and stuff like that. But because I still have because I've got quite a good 1,500 and then I have the strength from the 5K as well, the 3K kind of seems to be where I meet in the middle quite well. So no, it definitely suits me. And at these championships 2 years ago, I got bronze in the 3K behind John Travers and Hiko Tanosa, and that was my first ever national, my first ever senior medal. So no, I'm really looking forward to it, and I love indoors as a whole. I've only raced twice this year as well, so I think I'm coming into it relatively fresh, kind of with the overall or the kind of main aim being the World Indoors on the 18th of March. So I suppose it's kind of a weird one for me. Obviously I'm getting ready for the nationals, but I still have probably about still 4 weeks until my kind of main target race, so I kind of need to keep a lid on it as well. But no, I'm looking forward to it.
We were chatting to Phil Healy a little bit earlier about the difference between the indoor and outdoor, and obviously you touched it there, Darragh. It's a shorter lap as well. So how does that impact you, let's say tactics wise, in a longer race like the 3,000 meters?
Yeah, it's certainly different because there's more because the bends are steep as well. You have to be kind of careful if you're trying to pass people out and stuff. It's the same principle on the outdoor track that if you're passing somebody out, you try and do it on the straight so that you're not running an extra kind of bit of time. But obviously on the outdoors, you've got about 100 meters of straight that you can use to get around somebody, whereas on indoors it's probably only about 40 meters before it starts steeping up into the bend again. And so for outdoors, you don't want to pass somebody out on the bend because you're running an extra couple of meters or whatever, whereas in the indoors you have that as well as the fact you're actually running up a bit of a hill, you know what I mean, because obviously it's steep. So it is a lot more intense tactically. There's always stuff going on, and there always seems to be a few more kind of trips and falls and kind of things that can go wrong and things that can then subsequently go right and stuff like that. So you do probably have to be a little bit more aware kind of your surroundings and stuff indoors you do outdoor. But yeah, for me, I think it's important, just kind of same kind of principle of getting on the rail, staying on the curb for as much of the race as you can. And if you are making a move, to try and make it in that kind of 40 meter segment on either of the two straights. And yeah, and as I kind of touched on earlier, because of my kind of shorter stature, and I don't know, I've heard people have said to me before they think could be parts of playing other sports when I'm younger and stuff, that I tend to come off the bends quite well, that I can I don't know how to describe it, kind of dip into the bends and then kind of nearly slingshot out of them. I always feel good going around the bends, nearly better than I do on the straights. So I think that's why the indoors does kind of suit me a little bit more. So I suppose it definitely does kind of add a different layer tactically, just with the kind of different the different kind of terrain, I guess, in a way, because you're either up or you're down or whatever. But it's no, it's definitely exciting, and I think the kind of small compact arena as well usually makes for a really good atmosphere and stuff. So yeah, no, I love it, to be fair.
And you're coming into these national championships, Darragh, off the back of running a new indoor 2,000 meter PB of 7:45.91 in Metz, France, in the last couple of weeks. Like, that's a great confidence boost heading into the national championships, because you took, I think, almost 5 seconds off your previous PB. It's an Irish under-23 record and the world indoor qualifying standard as well. So you must feel in a pretty good place right now.
Yeah, no, I do. To be fair, I think I've kind of kicked on. I think I probably said it to you before the cross country in December as well. I kind of just feel like probably kind of coming off the back of last summer, I don't really know what, like, how or why, but I kind of just felt like I went to a bit of a new level, like, you know. And yeah, they've, like, obviously had the Euro Cross there in December, and just kind of managed to get out the other side of that, like, and kind of boot back up, and I've definitely kind of kicked on again. So like the race in Metz when I ran 7:45, like, it ticked all the boxes in the way of, as you say there, like, I wanted to get first and foremost get the world standard, which was 7:50, and I did that. And then obviously subsequently ran a PB and bettered my own under-23 indoor record. But like, nearly the most kind of encouraging thing about it as well was that, like, it was a good time, but I don't think I ran, like, particularly well. Like, the race wasn't kind of ideal in the way, like, I had to lead quite a lot of it, and run from the front quite a lot, which is something that you don't really want to do. You know, you'd rather kind of just sit in and be kind of towed along. So I think, yeah, as happy as I was with 7:45, I think, like, what was nearly kind of more encouraging was I came over the line thinking, yeah, like, there's definitely a good bit more in me, you know. And to be fair, like, in terms of going to the world champs, like, if you want to make a final there, you will have to be in, like, probably a 7:40 guy, you know, maybe low 7:40s, even high 7:30s. That's kind of the level you're going to have to be at in order to compete with the guys to try and make a final. And like, that's definitely my aim going out there as well. So I suppose it's kind of like having that kind of, you know, probably that kind of bit of confidence in the back of my mind, like, yeah, because obviously to everybody else I ran 7:45 and that was that, but I suppose I kind of just know myself it could have been a bit better, which is encouraging as well.
Like you said, that's very encouraging to know. Like, you ran your PB, but there's more to come. So what needs to happen for you to kind of, let's say, run a new PB in the next couple of weeks, months, or years? Is it all about the environment, the right race at the right time, everything come together, or what helps an athlete run a PB?
Yeah, definitely. Like so much of it is just getting the right race on the right day. Like, you know, you go to races sometimes and, like, you might not be prepared, and, like, it's happened to me before where, like, you know, I'm probably looking at the guys 2 or 3 seconds above me saying if I was that little bit fitter, it was a perfect race to try and run, you know, whatever. And like, it was kind of a weird one in Metz because I kind of just found myself at the front of that group. Whereas had it gone another way, if somebody else had hit the front and I was able to sit in, I think I definitely had another few seconds in there. So, like, really for the 3K, you want somebody, you know, like, running roughly the pace you, like, I think I could have ran, say, 7:40 dead, which is like 7:45 is 31 second lap, so it's like 30 point whatever. And, like, if I'd had somebody doing that and I was sitting in, I think I could have been able to do that and then hopefully kick off towards the end. But, like, you know, I suppose fitness trumps all in the way. Like, you need to always be ready, because you won't always get those races, you know, which I think I learned. Like, sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But I think for me, like, the rest of the indoor season, like, I suppose if I do have a low 7:40 performance or a high 7:30 3K performance in me, like, if I can use it in the world championships, that's you know, the best opportunity. And I think it's pretty probable that, like, my heat at the world champs could very much go out at that kind of pace. And then it's for me just trusting that I have the work done and getting in, and, you know, not kind of being afraid to put the cat amongst the pigeons, and, like, you know, be competitive in it, and try and hold on to the end, because then it could very much be a case of, you know, coming in the top 6 or whatever in your heat, or top 6 or 7, and end up running low 7:40s, you know. And then, like, yeah, like, going on from it, then I suppose it's like, for me, it's just about just keeping the consistency going. Like, I've been very consistent over the last couple of years, and I think I'm definitely kind of getting the results at the last couple of months, which is the most important thing. Like,
World Indoors in Belgrade, so obviously they're huge on the horizon, but they're a couple of weeks away yet. So it's about the National Senior Championships this weekend. So given the form you're in, what's your expectation for this weekend?
Yeah, like, I suppose I'm definitely going in trying to win it. But, you know, the same as any national championships, like, there's going to be a lot of competition. And it's kind of, it's a funny race. Like, obviously going off the entries for the 3K, like, you've got kind of, I suppose, the three names that probably jump out straight away would be myself, John Travers, and Nick Griggs. And it's kind of like a funny setup in the way that you have, like, you know, John, who's won so many national titles, and, you know, like, has beaten me to national titles before, and we've had like plenty good kind of battles over the last like couple of years. And then you obviously have me, who's kind of just coming into like my own as a senior or whatever. But then you've Nick Griggs, like, he's only 17, from Tyrone. He's absolutely flying as well, you know. Like he broke my national under-20 record there a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's in great shape as well. So I think it'd be an interesting race. But like I'm definitely going in, I suppose, with like both the hope and kind of the expectation of winning it. Because, like, to be fair, like, as much as I, you know, feel like maybe could have gone a bit quicker, like my 7:45, I think, was the fastest Irish indoor time since like 2002. So I mean, I suppose I probably am the form athlete coming into it. I suppose it's just about kind of executing it on the day. But like, saying that, like, I've obviously got like an unbelievable amount of respect for the lads in it. And even like, obviously I've mentioned two lads, but like, you've got other very good guys in it as well, like Keelan Carretto's in it, Conor Maguire, Ephraim Giddy. Like, there's loads of really good lads in it, so it's going to be a very good race. But I think it'd be foolish for me to kind of go in, you know, racing for anything other than go out. Like,
how much do you thrive off that competition?
I think it's so important. Like, and I think it's crazy, like, the last couple of years in Irish athletics, like, you know, like, the reason everybody's running as well, like, it's been unreal, like, the last kind of couple of weeks as well. Like, the indoor season's been very good, but even last summer, and it's like across the board, everybody's running so well. But like, it's purely because you have to now, like, the times that people, like, the Irish people are running now are like internationally competitive, whereas like back in the day they weren't, you know what I mean? So like, and I mean, it's definitely the case even like for myself. Like, if I could go into this national championships as a favorite after running, I don't know, like 8:05 for 3K, like, if that's the environment that you've been in for years, like, then it's very probable that that's the level I'd be at, like, do you know what I mean? Whereas that's not the case, and it's not the case really across the board for any of the events. Like, you need to be one of the top Europeans in your event to be competitive at these national championships, which is so important. Like, and I think that's the way that everybody's going to improve. So like, at the moment, like, you know, I mentioned those lads, like, but then even in 1500, you've got like Luke McCann and Andrew Cochran, who are both running unbelievably well this indoor season, like, you know, putting up times that are like really competitive on international level. And then that's what's important, because then it filters all the way back, because now even if you want to make a final, you're probably running a time that 6 years ago might have got you a medal. Do you know what I mean? But it's just leveling up across the board. And it's like every time, like, from my point of view, every time I see an athlete, like, regardless of like whether they're like a man or a woman, or like whether they do my event, or like it could be like, I could see like a woman break the Irish pole vault record, and like, I'll take that personally, be like, right, I need to, do you know what I mean? And I think everybody's doing the same thing. Like, it's like, you kind of see everybody's doing so well and like kind of breaking new ground, that you kind of just say to yourself, right, well, why am I doing that? Do you know what I mean? Which I think that's been the main kind of key the last couple of years. Like, it's just, and it kind of comes in ebbs and flows, I suppose, because like I've said this a few times, but like, when I was, you know, I look back to like when I was, say, 15, 16, and I was coming through, like, there wasn't really anybody at the front end of like any kind of international race, like, well, like, not any, but I know, like, for me, I suppose, like, you're looking at like the men's kind of 15, 3, 5K. Like, I rarely kind of would have tuned in and seen an Irish fest, or like, you know, watched a Diamond League and seen an Irish person towards the front. Whereas the last couple of years we have that, and then as a result, you know, there's more people kind of leveling up, and more people like even wanting to run in the first place and things like that. So like, I think it has a massive knock-on effect, and it is the competition that drives you on. Because as I say, like, if you could be average and still be, you know, if you could be average on the broad scheme of things but still win a national title, I think it would be very easy to fall into that trap. Whereas now it's at the stage where, like, I'm looking to make a world final, and like any other year, if you were looking to make a world final, you'd walk to national indoors, whereas I don't think that's the case this year, you know, which I think is important, because that's the way that Irish athletics on the whole will improve. Like,
and finally, Darragh, like you said there, it's an exciting time for Irish athletics, but it's also an exciting time for West Cork athletics. And we have a 2-page spread in this week's Southern Star just about the strength of West Cork athletics right now. Obviously, we've yourself and Phil Healy and Shane Howard, kind of national champions, national senior champions as well. But the likes of Nicola Tussell in the hammer, Jane Buckley from Leevale, Bandon of Adam, Fionn Harrington, there's Lauren McCourt, Maeve O'Neill from Dawneys, and there's more besides that. It's just a great time for West Cork athletics right now, and it's great to see that next generation on the way up as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, in a way, like, the same principle kind of applies, that, like, people from West Cork in the last couple of years have had people to look up to, do you know what I mean? In the way, like, you've, like, because I, like, geez, even for myself, like, when I was probably that age, like, kind of 15, 16 coming through, like, that was when Phil Healy first started winning national titles and things like that. And even though obviously me and Phil are, like, completely different athletes, her being a sprinter and whatever, but it's like, it's the same principle in the way that, like, if you can look around and see people kind of, you know, like, from your kind of area and whatever, similar background to you, doing great things, then it kind of, I suppose, inspires you to do the same. And, like, I would hope that, like, you know, like, from my kind of success over the last couple of years, that even, like, because I mean, you know, like, athletics is, like, what's so brilliant about athletics, like, it's just one of the most pure sports that you don't need anything to be good at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I trained until I was 18, until I came up to college. Like, I just trained on Bantry GA's second pitch in whatever weather, or trained around my own GA pitch at home. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing. So it's like, it doesn't really matter. Like, you know, like in other sports, like, you know, you're not going to be a good high jumper unless you're tall, or, like, you're not going to be a good, like, I don't know, you're not going to be a good rower unless you live next to a river, kind of thing. But, like, when, as a runner, like, you can do it from wherever. So, like, that's what I think is so pure about it, in the way that, like, everybody in West Cork should feel like, and in fairness, like, the facilities are coming now as well, because obviously Bandon are getting their track. And, like, yeah, like, things like that are great. And obviously there's a track in Kinsale now and stuff like that as well. But I think, no, I think definitely just success breeds success that way, like, you know what I mean? And it is like the kind of younger generation. It feels weird talking about a younger generation, because I would still class myself in that bracket, but the next kind of age group, I suppose, after me, like, I get great joy out of seeing them doing as well as they are. Like, you know, like, even tuning into the European juniors over the summer, there was 4 or 5, I'd say, from West Cork was there. I know
5 altogether,
yeah, 5, yeah, like, that's, geez, I'd say that probably never happened before. Do you know what I mean? So, no, things like that it's really encouraging across the board, and I think definitely for the next 2 years we'll probably keep on seeing the knock-on effects of that. Do you know what I mean?
Like you said, our West Cork athletics is on a high right now, and hopefully it'll be a great weekend for West Cork athletes at the Senior National Championships this weekend. Best of luck, Darragh.
Cheers, Kieran.
Access Credit Union now offers Cultivate Farm Finance and is ready to support local farmers. With a Cultivate loan, farmers in West Cork can benefit from the local decision-making and personal service offered by their credit union. To find out more, go to www.accesscu.ie/cultivate or call on 028 21 883.
Kieran, before we preview this week's Southern Star sports section, there was a sporting event both you and I were watching on Saturday evening, and that was the Amir Khan versus Kelbrook grudge match on Sky Box Office. What did you make of the fight? Did you enjoy it? The fight was obviously 10 years too late, as everyone has been saying online, but from a spectacle perspective, shall we say, did you have a good night's entertainment from the 25 quid or so you would have spent, or other means you may have watched it by?
I'll plead the fifth on that one, Jack, how I got to watch the fight. But I wouldn't be a boxing aficionado as much as you, and my knowledge you'd put in the back of a postage stamp. And I think my knowledge shows up the fact that I WhatsApped you before the fight and I said Team Ken, and within 20 minutes I was changing my verdict to Team Brooke. It was good fun. It was a grudge match that, like you said, probably a good few years too late. But even the build up, and obviously the two boys just don't like each other at all, and that was very evident in the lead up to this fight, and even when the Sky Sports the gloves are off show, like that was good entertainment, because it looked like Ken was getting under Brooke's skin there, and it looked like Brooke was fairly rattled, but when it came to the actual action itself, it was Brooke that rattled Ken, and it was very one-sided. So as a boxing fan yourself, Jack, and as a boxer yourself, what do you make of the one-sided nature of it? Were you surprised that Brooke was so dominant?
It's hard to say surprised, because this was his first meaningful fight in nearly 3 years. Like, he had one kind of circus fight down in Dubai against some nobody, just kind of a money spinning event, and he looked okay. But in his last meaningful fight, where he fought the kind of pound for pound possibly number one, Terence Crawford, he basically quit in the ring, and it was like, that's pretty much him finished. And that's nearly 3 years ago now. But Terence Crawford followed up that win over Caen with a dominant victory over Kell Brook as well. And I also said the same thing, like, geez, these lads just can't compete at the top level anymore. So it was probably the perfect fight for both at this stage of their careers, to meet each other, make a pile of money, and leave on a high. What I will say I was surprised about was how impressive Kell Brook was. I didn't expect him to come in as good shape. He's struggled with his weight throughout his career, but he actually looked imperious. He looked almost back to his best pre his fight with Golovkin. So Kell Brook was one of the best welterweights in the world. Then he stepped up to middleweight, fought Golovkin, and ever since then he's had trouble with his eyes. He had both his orbital bones broken, so I thought he was well past his sell-by date. But after seeing his performance against Caen, it's like people are saying, oh, maybe he could fight Eubank Jr. now, maybe he could fight Conor Benn. There's still life in the old dog yet. But Joe, I would say let Kell Brook retire with a career-defining victory against his oldest rival, a pile of money in the bank. And like his entrance, a big part of boxing is the pizzazz that goes around with it, and Kell Brook's entrance throughout his career has always been spectacular, and it was at its most spectacular on Saturday night. They had the piano intro for Kanye West's All of the Lights, and the phones or whatever lighters that they had in the stadium just looked spectacular on television. I'm sure it was brilliant to be there as well. The atmosphere was raucous, despite the fact that the undercard was possibly the worst in living memory. But it was all about the main event and the show that went around it. So yeah, just from a pure Saturday night entertainment's point of view, I thought it was brilliant. It was a bit hard to watch Amir Khan take the punishment he took, because he just didn't look really like he wanted to be there for a lot of it. He looked like Bambi at times, just couldn't find his feet. But yeah, it was. And
he was waving the white flag afterwards, wasn't he? Even his interview with Sky Sports after, when he said, like, kind of his love or passion for the sport isn't there. It's almost, I'm not saying he was making excuses, but you could see that he was like, he was like, the white flag was raised. And there was one point there before the 6th round when it even looked like, is he going to come back out for the next round? He was getting so well beaten, and it's like there was a strange moment where he was looking, he went over to the corner and he was looking down, and they were waiting to come up to him and stuff, and you're wondering, what's going on here? But just on the entrances, right? Kell Brook was very good. I wasn't really impressed with Amir Khan's entrance at all. All of a sudden, he was walking through a garage and past all these different vehicles underneath the stadium. And next thing, he just walked out, and it wasn't impressive at all, just from my point of view.
That actually was, if we're talking about white flags, that was a red flag for me at the time. I was like, because they put such effort into Kell Brook's entrance, like the production. Kell Brook was dialed in, like you could see it in his eyes. He was there to fight. Whereas Amir Khan was like, they first showed him walking out of a dressing room across the road. It was almost like he was coming from a different building, and he's like, oh, I'll be okay, kind of a thing. No, he didn't look, like I thought from bell one, he did not look, I wouldn't say interested, but he didn't look present. Do you know what I mean?
Fight. He didn't look up for it or something.
Yeah, and the entrance all
muted.
It was muted. It was just like, Joe, there was this, like for people who didn't watch, there was a delay at the start of the fight because there was an issue with Kell Brook's gloves, and Team Amir Khan wanted him to change his gloves. So they were playing all sorts of dirty tricks from what I could tell, just from watching on television. And I wouldn't be surprised if like the Khan team were like up until the last minute kind of not wanting to go through with it, because they probably didn't have a proper training camp, judging by what you hear in the whispers on social media or on various boxing podcasts, whereas Kell Brook had trained like it was the biggest fight of his career. So there probably were, a bit of indecision on Khan's part. He knew he wanted to go through with the fight because he was going to make, probably £20 million or something. But the fact that he actually had to fight to make that money, I'm sure disappointed, because if you hear him speaking, Khan, like, it's sad to say, but he does seem to have a touch of what they would have called in olden times, like the punch drunkenness. Like his formation of sentences has dwindled in the last number of years. Like he's taken some serious blows throughout his career. He's been one of the most knocked out, world-class boxers that you'd ever see, which have made his career so exciting, because you never knew whether he was going to get knocked out or knock someone out. So yeah, just please God, it's the last time we see him in anything meaningful. He can go and fight maybe some YouTube star or WWE wrestler, but I don't want to see him, because he's a legend. Like, I absolutely loved Amir Khan throughout his career. Followed him since the 2004 Olympics when he won silver as a 17-year-old. But now is the time.
What we need to, Jack, friend of the show, Adam Smith, was obviously there in Sky Sports Boxing. We need to put a call out to Adam. I think he needs a Star Sport podcast at the next high-profile English boxing grudge match, whether that's Chris Eubank Jr., you can see he was angling for the Kelbrook fight after. He was almost trying to beef up a grudge that isn't as big as people might think it is. You could see he's kind of he's eyeing up Brooke. But if Adam Smith, fan of the show, I'm sure he listens to us every week. If he wants us to come over and add a bit of colour and life to the next Sky Sports boxing box office event, we'll be there, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the call, Adam. If you need a kind of a new, since like a lot of the broadcasting team that used to work with Sky have left to go to the Zone, if you need to fill any of those gaps, me and Kieran are available at a very good rate. All we want is our flights paid for and maybe a hotel and some breakfast. Would that do us, Kieran?
Hotel and breakfast, that's it. Yeah, and we'll make our own way to the stadium. I'm sure we can get a taxi or something. But we're very low cost. And
we'll expense the taxi to the Southern Star, so Sky won't have to cover all our costs. So yeah,
that's
our pitch. That's our audition for the Sky Sports Boxing punditry team. But anyway, Kieran, much more importantly than 20,000 people in the Manchester Arena is what is going to be in this week's Southern Star sports section. We already mentioned the brilliant spread, which Kieran has shown me a preview of the Athletics. What else can readers expect? I presume you're going to have some pretty dour analysis of the Cork footballers over the weekend.
Yeah, it was a bad weekend for the Cork men's and ladies footballers. So both teams actually are in relegation trouble. So the Cork men's team lost to Derry and they're home to Galway in Páirc Uí Chaoimh this Saturday evening. So it's a must-win game for Cork, but the odds are that they're not going to win it because Galway are one of the favourites to win promotion to Division 1. And then with the ladies footballers, they shipped a heavy defeat to Dublin last weekend. That means Cork have lost to both Meath and Dublin in the last 2 weeks. So they're going to head into their final group game against Waterford in a couple of weeks' time. Both teams have lost both games so far. So the loser of this game will be in the relegation playoff. And Cork boss Shane Ronayne pulled no punches after this the performance against Dublin. He said it bordered on embarrassing at times and they didn't work hard enough. So we've that and more in Thursday's Southern Star. But in the good news, the Cork Camogie team, they beat Clare away last Sunday. That was a good win in the league, even though it's probably been a bit overshadowed by the fact that Davy Fitz, the new Cork Camogie coach, got sent off late in the game, as well as one of the Clare Giant managers. But at least the Cork Camogie team have started on the front foot. But
can we talk about that? Can we talk about that just for a brief moment? Like, I'm sure you've seen the video. And I don't know what you make of it all, because you'd assume Davy was brought in to add like some experience to the Cork management team. And there's always a risk when you hire a David Fitzgerald that there are going to be some flare-up moments throughout the season, because that's just the nature of his character. And we all expect and accept that. But Jesus Christ, it
just overshadows like it was a national camogie game. Like, you two good teams there in Cork and Clare, and those players had to wait around while this thing was getting sorted 5 minutes from the end. Like, it's kind of, when you see the headlines on Monday in some of the national on the websites and so on from the national media organisations, it was more about Davy Fitz red carded rather than Cork Camogie got their league off to a winning start. That Amy O'Connor played well, that Sorka McCartan, a new player from Down, played quite well. And so
I'm going to be devil's advocate here and make the point that, and this is like more of a black mark against the Irish media than anyone else, but there's a case to be made that had Davy not been shown a red card, that there would have been no coverage of the result in like the homepage of the various websites. As you mentioned, they're usually buried down somewhere on page 6, 7 or 8. So maybe that's their reason. He's a headline grabber. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or bad or indifferent, but it is a strange one, because I would tend to agree with you that those types of actions don't help matters or don't improve the lot of camogie, really. It
doesn't do anyone any favours, kind of. You'd hope that we won't have too many Davy Fitz headlines for the wrong reasons this year. Like, he's there as coach of the Cork Camogie team to improve this team and get them one step closer to winning the All-Ireland. So hopefully that's where they'll end up later in the year. But you'd hope we won't have headlines like we saw on Sunday night and on Monday. But the good news is that Cork Camogie did win. And another piece of bad news is Cork boss Matthew Toomey revealed afterwards that Fiona Keating is out for 6 weeks. She broke her hand in training last week, and Fiona, again, is a friend of the show here. She's the Courcey Rovers forward, one of Cork's best young players. So she's going to miss a huge chunk of the league with that injury. So we've that and a lot more in Thursday, Southern Star. And on Saturday, Drina Rangers women's team will make West Cork League history when they become the first women's team from the region to compete in a Munster competition. So I caught up with their manager, Mike Doolin, just for a small chat about that. And that's at 2:00 in Drina on Saturday. And he makes the point that the Drina Rangers, and they have an A and B team in the West Cork Women's 7-a-side League. He says they're the worst supported team in the club because besides a son or daughter or a husband of one of the players, no one turns up to watch the Drina Rangers women's team. So he's calling on local sports fans and sports fans in general just to give this Drina Rangers women's team some support on Saturday, because they're going into the unknown. Okay, they're making history. They're going to be the first West Cork League women's team to play in Munster. But here in West Cork, they play in a 7-a-side AstroTurf league. That's what it is. There's no 11-a-side women's league on grass in West Cork. But on Saturday, they're playing 11-a-side and they're playing on grass. So they're very much, like I said, they're going into the unknown. Like they'll be up against it on Saturday. So hopefully we'll have fans turn out to cheer them on and give them a bit of support, because it's good news for women's soccer in West Cork, and it's just a positive to have. As well as that, we have an interview with Florrie O'Driscoll. He's the Island Rovers selector, just on their season ahead and how the club is trying to regroup. We had a couple of West Cork Sports Star Awards presentations last week to Jane Buckley, the young Newcestown athlete, who's been making headlines for all the right reasons in the last couple of months, and to Tygo Sullivan. He's the Courcey Rovers captain. So we've that. And as well, one of my favourite pieces this week, we have Tom Savage of the Three Red Kings. Our listeners will know him quite well. He's been on the podcast a good few times with us. He has a full page explaining why John Hodnett from Rosscarbery is so good. And this is a brilliant piece. Like, Tom Savage knows his rugby inside out and back to front. And he just explains in such easy terms what makes former Carbery Rangers footballer John Hodnett such a precocious rugby talent. And he explains why Munster tied him down on a new contract, even though he'd years to run on his current contract. So it's a really good read as well. So there's lots to sink your teeth into in Thursday, Southern Star.
Yeah, and that will, of course, be available in shops across West Cork and further afield from Thursday. But if you can't make it to the shops, you can always subscribe online to our digital edition. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/e-paper and you can subscribe to the Southern Star for less than €2 per week. As I mentioned, on Thursday, we'll be releasing a second special podcast this week where we're going to be joined by Cork GAA CEO Kevin O'Donovan to talk about a multitude of things, including his favourite Ed Sheeran song. Well, we might not ask him that, but maybe we will. We'll see. But of course, we'll talk to him about the Porky situation, the appointment of Keith Ricken, fixtures, structures, and everything in between. So that will be out on Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Slán Tamil.